I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker tonight. It's Dr. Kerry Muhlestein, and there he is. Kerry is currently a faculty member of BYU, and he's been at in Jerusalem several times. He actually was a student himself. In undergrad, he did psychology, and he did a minor in Hebrew. And then he went back on the Hebrew intensive program for the Jerusalem Center as a student, where he met his wife, Julie Ann, and they have 6 children together. So so many good things start at the Jerusalem Center, and Jeff Chadwick would call that another Jerusalem miracle. He has a master's degree in ancient Near Eastern studies and a PhD from UCLA in Egyptology. And he does specialize in Egypt, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you do digs over there, or you?
Yeah, I direct an excavation in Egypt. So at UCLA, Egyptology was my primary emphasis, in Hebrew language and literature my secondary. But I direct an excavation in Egypt. A lot of my research is Egyptological. A lot of it's biblical as well, or Book of Abraham. But I spent a lot of time in Egypt.
That's great. And, that may sound like, oh, maybe that's unrelatable. Maybe he's a boring guy, but I assure you he's not. I've seen video of him with his students, and he's a lot of fun. And one thing I want to point out about Dr. Muhlestein is that he has a special interest in showing people how the scriptures are real. And he's talked about that before, but he has a podcast where this is the main subject. He's talking about experiences and things that people have that taught them that the scriptures are real. Tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Oh, I'd be happy to. So this makes one of my slides superfluous, but anyway, not really. I'll want to hit on it again, but I just feel like when the scriptures become real to you, and the people and the places in the scriptures become real to you, because we know we're real people. When we feel how real they are, then we can relate it to our lives better. We can start to think, well, what would that have been like for them? Oh, I've been through things like that. So now this story becomes applicable, it becomes more powerful, and we certainly need that, all the help we can get these days, that power that comes from really feeling the scriptures are real. And I don't think there's any audience more cued for that than Jerusalem Center alumni.
That's probably true. That's great. We do definitely, most of us who have been to the Jerusalem Center or on that Jerusalem study abroad, we know what that's like to sit in a place and to have that epiphany that we recognize the reality of the scriptures. I'm glad you're doing that. I think it's a real gift to a lot of people to learn from the experiences of others. And hopefully those who are struggling in the gospel will be especially affected by that, because those of us who have had those experiences, I think you just want to share it. You want to share the reality. Well, we're going to go ahead, and tonight I just want to introduce beforehand that we're going to have our opening prayer by Vicki Johnson, who was a student at the Jerusalem Center in the fall of 1993. And our closing prayer tonight will be by Clark Anderson, who attended in the fall of 1986, the last group before the Jerusalem Center opened. So let's go ahead now, and I'll get off the screen, and we'd love to learn from you. Thank you, Brother Muhlestein, for coming tonight.
Our dear, kind Heavenly Father, we're so very grateful that we could gather together this evening and to learn more of Thee. We are grateful for the Holy Land and for those of us that have been so fortunate to live and learn there. And we ask that Thy Spirit be with us as we learn tonight from Brother Muhlestein, that we will remember and learn and grow, and that our testimonies will be strengthened. We are so very thankful for the Savior and for our relationship with Him. And we're grateful for all the experiences that we have throughout our life that testify to us that He lives and that He lived. And we are so very thankful for His role in our life. And we ask Thee to bless us all this night, that we may feel Thy Spirit and that we may take these things and ponder them in our hearts. And we say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Vicki, and thank you, April. I'm going to share my screen so that we can do a PowerPoint. and get that going. Oh, I forgot to have a couple slides here at the beginning, but anyway, this is just to kind of let people know what we're talking about. But I know that everyone here probably went to the Valley of Elah, probably stood right in that spot that's on the screen right now and did slings, and you can picture these areas that we're talking about. And so this story is not unfamiliar to you, talking about the David and Goliath story. I'm even wearing my my David and Goliath tie. I don't know if you can see it there, but we got the tie on. So this is a story that is familiar to everyone. And yet I hope that there's some little element tonight that maybe I hope that for everybody, there's one or two little elements that you've never thought of or never pictured or never quite been able to have it be that real for you. And that's what our goal is tonight. So we'll start out with that idea. It really is important to me that the people feel that the scriptures are real. So that's what we were talking about beforehand. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but maybe I still do want to read a quote that I think you may have heard before, and you'll vibrate with because you've had these experiences in the Holy Land. And it's actually from St. Jerome, he's the first person to translate the Bible from Hebrew and Greek. He translates it into Latin, so not necessarily really accessible to us, but still it's the first time that it's being translated. And he felt like he couldn't do that not being in the Holy Land. He felt like he really wouldn't be able to translate as well as if he wasn't familiar with the places. So he went to the Holy Land to do the translation. He did a good chunk of it in Bethlehem. So you've probably went to Jerome's grotto when you enter at the Church of the Nativity, or you might remember a statue of St. Jerome there to commemorate the translation work he did there. But this is what he said. He said, 5 Gospels record the life of Jesus. 4 you will find in books, and the 1 you will find in the land they call holy. Read the 5th Gospel, and the world of the 4 will open to you. And that's what we're trying to do in these events. That's what you were trying to do when you were in Jerusalem. It's what I try and do on my podcast and in my classes and so on. We want to understand the text, certainly. That's the primary thing. But if we understand the land, the people, the cultures, then the text tells us more, and we draw more out of it. And that's what we want. So we're going to go through that tonight. And for some of you, this will be deja vu. We're going to look at some maps and some acronyms that you probably did while you were there. But some of you were just there a few years ago and you'll remember it well. And some of you are like me, you were there 30 years ago. And you need to have your memory jogged a little bit. But let's look at it. So this is just to help us understand the topography of the Holy Land. So you've got the coastal plains, right? And the Philistines were occupying this chunk of the coastal plains. Then you have these low hills, and that's the area we're talking about today, called the Elah. And you can see these valleys going up in these low hills. Then you get the high hills, and that's where so like from Hebron all the way up to here, this is where what we call the Way of the Patriarchs was. Then, of course, you go way down to the Jordan Rift Valley, and then you can go back up into the high hills of Jordan. So the topography really plays a key role. And so you've got the Philistines that are in David's day. The Philistines occupy this coastal area. The Israelites are in the highlands, and the area where they're going to often meet is here in the Elah, that which means low lands or low hills, really, right? So that ends up being kind of the opposite of what happens, say, when the 48 and so on, when there's the war between the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Israelis have the coastal area and the Palestinians have the high area, so they kind of switch courses at that time. Here's some more pictures so you can kind of get a feel for that. And you see these low hills that are the Elah, or the low-lying hills that have these entryways. So there's a nice picture, so you can kind of picture them with the higher hills up there, but these green lower hills down low. And you've spent a lot of time in them. Here's another map that I think is really helpful to see just the stark changes in elevation, where you're at sea level here, 1,300 feet. You jump up to 2,500 feet, way down to now it's even lower than 1,350. But you've got a lot of elevation changes there, and those elevation changes govern what's happening in the highland. Now, you're probably all familiar with these 5 valleys that control access. If you're going to get from the coastal plain up to where all these Israelites up here are, you can't really, it's hard to go up and down all these hills. So you take these valleys that are made by these rivers, right? So we've got these 5 rivers, and you're probably familiar, you were probably taught by someone on a field trip, this acronym that we use, a Siegel, to remember the 5 valleys. So you've got the Ayalon Valley, the Sorek Valley, the Elah Valley, which is what we're talking about today, the Guvrin Valley, and the Lachish Valley. So we say a Siegel to help you remember those things. And probably some of you had them on quizzes and tests and things like that. And hopefully you still remember them. But if not, I've just jogged your memory. So these are the ways to get from these low hills up, or the coastal plain through the low hills up to the high hills. And that's why these end up being important places, and they each have an important city that guarded the way. So let's talk about those, and specifically the one here in the Valley of Elah. So the valley really starts out here, and you can see the little river, right? And it winds along, and we're going to end up with it winding through and coming here and around here and around here. And that's where most of our story is going to take place, as it winds through this area. We're not going to find Azekah and the David and Goliath story. So I wanted to talk about it first, then we'll focus on the David and Goliath story at the end. But Azekah is also important biblically. And so that's what we'll hit first, is to talk about that tell, which most of you, I would guess, went to. Here's a nice picture of it, and you may recognize the road sign there, right? We're just a little ways from Beit Shemesh, 11 kilometers, and 39 from Jerusalem as you head out on Highway 38. But this is Tel Azekah up here. This hill, or this mountain, is Tel Azekah. So there's a little bit closer picture of it. And you can see the rough way to get up there, but most people take a more paved road that comes up the backside. There's Dr. Frank Judd. You can read with us right there. It says we're at Tel Azekah. This is how we walk up there. Each of these little stone markers actually has in Hebrew a verse from the story of David and Goliath. Again, it doesn't happen at Azekah, but you get a great bird's eye view of what happened from up there. Here you can see, and again, this is the springtime. You can tell by how green it is, but this is going up to Azekah. There's Dr. Jeff Chadwick as we walk through kind of the forested area there. And recently, well, somewhat recently, for like, I don't know, the last 7, 8, 9 years, I don't know, time keeps going by too quickly. They've been doing some excavations at Azekah. I think they're done now, but I haven't been there for a little while, since COVID really, so I'm not sure. But, and I will say that's one nice thing about being an archaeologist, and especially someone who excavates in Egypt, is if you go to any excavation in Israel and you walk up and they're usually like, okay, don't bother us. There are always people coming to bother us. But then you tell them you direct an excavation in Egypt and they want to talk to you all day, and they'll tell you everything they're doing and show you stuff they're not supposed to show people yet, and so on. So that's kind of a fun thing. And then if you go with Dr. Chadwick, then he knows everyone that's working there anyway, and they tell you even more, and so on. So I've enjoyed being able to learn a lot about these various excavations. So you can see them working on the hillside there. Now, if you'll forgive me, we're just going to, you have to let me nerd out for a second, right? You're used to this from your A&E teachers and maybe some of your other teachers. So we have to kind of just talk about Azekah the way that I know you really want to, which is to talk about late bronze occupation and those kinds of things. So it's about 1,033 feet high. So you can see, again, it's starting to get higher. If you really want the coordinates, there they are. So you can put it in your GPS unit. It was a Canaanite city in the late Bronze period. So that's like the time of Moses. It would have been a city state. And so that's who Joshua's going to have to deal with. And there are a few early Iron ones. So that's like David's period. Few early Iron One remains, but mostly not. This is largely not occupied during the time of David. It was occupied before that, and it will be occupied after that. But there's not a lot going on during David's time period. It was conquered by Joshua, and we can tell archaeologically that it witnesses a destruction at about 1000 BC, which would be after Joshua and maybe around David's time or just before David, somewhere in there. Some people propose the dating's off a bit, and it's Joshua's level of destruction. In the end, I really don't know. Let's see here. I have to move my little bar where I can see all your happy faces to do more of this. It does end up being fortified by Rehoboam. So that's Solomon's son, right? So you get this little period of time like during Saul, David, and Solomon, where it doesn't seem like there's much going on there. But then it's rebuilt, and it becomes a major fortification during the days of Solomon's son Rehoboam, possibly part of his reaction to the the northern kingdom dividing off and wanting to fortify cities in case they come down and want to attack. And it's a great location to protect that entrance through the Elah Valley. And so if he's worried about people coming along the coast and then up through the Elah Valley, that's a good reason to build this city there. It is one of the cities that was attacked by the Assyrians during the days of Hezekiah. So this is what the Assyrians say about it. As for Hezekiah the Judean, who did not submit to my yoke, I surrounded 46 of his strong-walled cities and the numberless small towns in their surroundings by laying down ramps and applying battering rams, onslaughts by foot, troops, tunnels, breaches, and siege ladders. I conquered them. 200,150 people, small and great, male and female, horses, mules, donkeys, camels, oxen, and small cattle without number, I brought out of them, and I counted them as spoil. Then if we're going to look at specifically what he said, I'm going to have to hide these controls. Well, all right, I think I can read that. What he says about Azekah, he says, Ashur, my lord, and I can't see what it says there, but anyway, he marches in, and with the might of Ashur, my lord, the province of Hezekiah of Judah, like something else that's broken there. The city of Azekah, his stronghold, which is between my border and the land of Judah. And then it's broken. And then he says, like the nest of an eagle, we think, we're not sure, but it's something about Azekah. It's located on a mountain ridge, like pointed iron daggers without number, reaching high to heaven. So these peaks of the Azekah and the areas around there. Its walls were strong and rivaled the highest mountains. To the mere side, as if from the sky, it appears something we don't know. And so anyway, we think it's talking about earth ramps that were mighty, battering rams brought near. So he's talking about how he built ramps and battering rams and attacked the foot soldiers and so on, and they were attacked. They had seen the approach of my cavalry, and they had heard the roar of the mighty troops of the god of Ashur, and their hearts became afraid. Then he says, the city Azekah I besieged, I captured, I carried off its spoil, I destroyed, I devastated, I burned with fire. So that's his bragging rights about what happens to Azekah, which is probably the third to last city standing. He destroys that, then Lachish, and then up to Jerusalem. And that's seems to be similar to what happens later when the Babylonians come as well. But we have this account of his destroying Azekah. And we'll also mention that after that, I'll show you some pictures of some of those things. After that, it's rebuilt by Josiah. So it lays not occupied for a while, or at least meagerly occupied. And then it is one of the last three cities mentioned as remaining during the Babylonian invasion. So it's Azekah, Lachish, and then Jerusalem. We know from the letters at Lachish that they see the watchfires of Azekah go out, and they know that they've fallen, and they're going to come to Lachish next. And we'll show you a video that can help us reenact that, or think of that in just a minute. And it's worth thinking what these people went through. What was it like to have the Assyrians laying siege there, and all these terrible burnings and destructions that Sennacherib talked about with the Assyrians, and then that happening again under the Babylonians. And what would it be like for the people of Assyria when they see those lights go out and they know that they're next, right? These are pretty dramatic things. So let's look at a couple of pictures. You can see the excavations of where they believe the siege ramp was. They found lots of evidence for the siege ramp and of battles happening there. There's another view of that area. So there's kind of a close-up of some of the excavations there where the siege ramp they believe is. These are excavations up on top where they're finding some of those settlements we talked about from late bronze or during the Iron Age and so on. So you can see all sorts of excavations happening there. So before we do this, I am going to share a video. This is actually from my YouTube channel. We're having some of my Jerusalem Center students on there in case you want to hear it. You'll hear Dr. Chadwick's voice on here. This is taken from Azekah looking towards Lachish when we did these mirrors trying to catch the sun, so you could kind of see what it would be like to be on one and see the fires in the other. So we'll just let this video play for a minute.
So now can you imagine a 30-foot tall bonfire on that hilltop over there?
That's Dr. Chadwick's talking there.
Yes, just as brightly.
So right now the person with the camera is trying to figure out where that would be because they can't see the flashing yet, but you will see it. They're getting good sun right now. All right, we're counting on Trace. You can do this for us. Did you see it right here? Whoop, now it went away, but it's right here. So that's Lachish. Oh, but the person with the camera is still searching for it, but it's right over here. Did you see that flash right here? You'll see it better. There it was.
sure if I'm videoing?
Right there. That was my daughter Alexia saying she wasn't sure she was videoing in the right place, but she was.
I didn't see it. I was busy trying to.
You need a couple more. Sabrina hasn't seen it. Don't worry, you're going to see a better flash in just a second here. Are you seeing us every now and then? But I'm also waiting for a classic line from Dr. Chadwick.
I know. I'm an expert.
There you go. See what you were saying? They can see you really well. And he says, I know, I'm an expert. See that there? So that gives you an idea of how far apart they would have been as they're sitting up on, oh, now I have to move this so I can make this big again. Whoops. As they're sitting up on this hill here and looking for those fires. I often will show my students the pictures, from Lord of the Rings where they're lighting the fires from Minas Tirith and so on over to Gondor, just to give you that idea of how that communication was important, but also to give you an idea of what it must have been like when the lights went out at Azekah. And they did go out. That destruction was pretty terrible and very real. And that's part of Isaiah's day. Isaiah is trying to get these people to repent, and they're not listening to him, and that destruction comes. Fortunately, in Jerusalem, they listened and repented and were saved. And that's one of my favorite stories in all of the Bible, the fact that they are miraculously spared because they finally listened to the prophet and they repent. And there's probably a good lesson for us in there as well. Well, let's look at the topography again here and the geography and see if we can kind of figure out a little bit of the story of David and Goliath, the story that I know everyone here is familiar with and loves. So the key cities we want to talk about: Gath, where Dr. Chadwick has been excavating for a long time, I think more than 2 decades. And you have this brook, of course, the river actually flows this way, but the brook goes right past Gath, and then it will continue up here, like we said. There's Azekah that we were just talking about. We believe this is Sha'araim. We're going to talk about that. It's mentioned in the biblical text. So Gath, Sha'araim, and Shoko are all mentioned in the biblical text, so that we can kind of get an idea of what's going on here. Sorry, I just like seeing your happy smiling faces, but it keeps getting in my way. So again, this is another picture so you can kind of get that. Gath, Azekah, what is known as Tel Kafia, which we think is Sha'araim. I'll talk about that some more in a minute. Shoko, and don't worry about this one. I don't know why it's circled in yellow. Anyway, all right, we're going to keep going, and let's read some of the biblical text. And I have to hide. Where's my thing to hide this? There we go. Okay. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shoko. So we're going to look at that again, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shoko and Azekah and Ephes Damim. All right. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the Valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. All right, so that's the geographical markers that we need to know. So with that in mind, then let's remember they've come up from Gath. It tells they've gone past Azekah. They're not yet to Shoko, and they're on this side because they're on the side of Shoko with the valley in between them. All right, and the Sha'araim will be mentioned later, but that's probably right there. It's Tel Kafia. So the other thing I want to highlight is that if you follow the river up, if you follow this valley up, the place you arrive at is Bethlehem. So you'll remember that David has brothers there. That's why David goes, because his father sends him with some food and cheese and so on to his brothers who are fighting in the battle, and Jesse is sending supplies to them. Well, their family has a pretty vested interest in this. If the Philistines get through, and I think they're cut off because the Israelites are right here, and they're afraid to get behind them, and then they could have a force come from this side and one come from this side, and they get caught between. So that's why they stop there. But if they were to get through, the place they're going to end up at is, as they're trying to get up into the high hills in that way of the patriarchs, they're going to end up at Bethlehem, and that won't be good for David's family at all. So Jesse and all of his sons have a vested interest in how this works and what happens there. And that's, I would guess that they would be fighting anyway, but that's a real part of why they're fighting, I believe. As we read in the text, the Philistines are going to camp between Azekah and Shoko. I think if the Israelites are right here, like I believe they are, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and I'm not the only one to think that, and I'm not even the one that, I mean, I got that idea from actually from Aaron Myers, who I first heard it from, and who excavates at Gath, and then from Dr. Chadwick and others as well. But so it's not original to me, but I believe that's probably where the Israelites are. So the Philistines have to be here west of the Israelites. The standoff doesn't work if they're already east of them. So they have to be west between Azekah and Shoko. So they have to be somewhere in this area right here. We can pinpoint it within a decent amount of space that's where they have to be. All right. So this is looking from Azekah to give you an idea of that. There's where Shoko is. Sha'araim is right here. And so the Philistines, they've come up that valley and they're curving around. It does an S curve here, and that's important. We're going to look at that some more as we go along, but it does an S curve. So they've come around and they're starting to head up. And again, if they head up, we're going to get to Bethlehem up here. But as they come around, they're going to get cut off by the Israelites who are right here. And so they're going to stop right here. Now, note, they're actually in a little bit of a pickle. They can't retreat very easily either, because the Israelites can come down on this side to get them. And that's going to come to play in the story as we look at this. So this is looking, you can see some of our students who are slinging stones right there. But this is looking across. Shoko is right here. Some great remains at Shoko that you can go and see as well. So the Philistine camp is somewhere right around here. And again, the Israelites are probably right up here. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but so the Philistines have to be there or west of there. And I want you to also look where you can see where the river, you can always tell where the valley or the river bed is, where the trees are, and it does start to curve over here, and then pretty soon it's going to be over here, and that's going to be an important part of what we're trying to show you. So this is a picture looking down on that valley. Where you can see, again, from Azekah, here's the Israelite camp, probably right here, Philistine camp, probably right here, and it curves around, as we've said. Now, we're all familiar with this part of the story, but this is worth thinking about again. He, meaning David, took his staff in his hands and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had, even in a scrip, and his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistines. So there are a number of reasons I want to bring this up. You've probably heard ideas of spiritual lessons that David is good with a sling. He's already killed a bear and a lion. He has great faith that God will deliver him and help him. But he's also going to take 5 stones. I think he's not 100% counting on it being done or happening first try. Now, I've heard some people have said, no, that means Goliath has 5 brothers, and so he knew that they would all come and try and kill him, so he took 5 stones. I don't know, it doesn't play out that way, so I don't think so, but I think David's just being prepared, and that's fantastic. But part of what I want to also focus on is that as he comes from the Israelite camp, he's going to come down, and he's going to go across the brook, or the stream or the river of Elah, before he gets out to fight the Philistine. So he has to go across where it's here close to the Israelite side. All right, I'll show you again later. It's a little hard to see in some of this stuff, but it curves over, and pretty soon it's over on the Philistine side. All right. And when it's over on this side, that can't be where David goes down, because then he wouldn't cross the brook before he fights Goliath. And he clearly crosses the brook before he fights Goliath. So it's got to be somewhere around here. All right. And the Israelite camp is right up here. I've taken this picture as I was climbing down from the Israelite camp. I tried climbing down 4 or 5 different ways, and it ends up that no, you can only go down about really 2 ways, kind of 3 ways, if you're going to go down, to figure out which way it would have been. And I think it's almost certainly down this little area right here. It could be on the other side, but I think because of the way you can see that this stream starts to go over to the other side right there, I think it almost has to be right here. So let's look at what we think is the Israelite camp, or at least I and many others do. This area that is Tel Kafia, but it's very likely that this is what the Bible it refers to as Sha'araim. Okay, so to understand that, we have to know what Sha'araim means. Sha'ar means gate. So if you're going to do plural of gates, it's Sharim, right? So you've heard of Mea Sharim, which means 100 gates. That area is named that because they have just so many gates in that area, right? So Mea Sharim, which you've heard of the area in Jerusalem, it's Orthodox. Sha'araim means 2 gates. It's the dual. That means there are 2 gates there. Now, most of these kinds of cities would only have 1 gate. They want to just control access in, and there's usually 1 way to come in. But as you saw, this hill, you can go down into the valley on either side. And so they actually had 2 gates that you could go through and to gain access to either way. And so it makes perfect sense that this would be called Sha'araim. It's in the place where you would expect it to be, and it has this feature that would give it that name. So here is looking up at that area from down in the valley. Here you can see one of the gates right here, the area going out, and it's this 4-chambered gates. If you are one of these people that counts chambers and gates, 1, 2 on this side, 1, 2 on that side, and there's the threshold right there of that gate. Here's a close-up of that threshold. You can see the post hole where the door would have turned in there, and there's the threshold. There you are looking at it from the other side. No, actually, that's the other one. This is the other gate. So you've got, again, looking, going out the other direction towards Azekah, where you can get down to this part of that valley. So the first one went down to the valley that's looking towards Shoko. This is the gate that you go out to look towards Azekah, and you get down to this part of the valley. So that's why Sha'araim, and the fact that you have access to both parts of the valley is important and will be an important part of this story. Again, I first got this idea from Aaron Mayer, so I want to give him credit for that. And just because we do want to geek out, this is a fantastic example of a casemate wall for those of you who studied casemate walls while you were in Israel. So where they would fill the stuff in between and make it a stronger wall. Okay, so here we are in the Valley of Elah. This is the part where we usually stand and we throw stones and sling stones here in this area. You can see how it goes right up along the side of the hill here. But if you are looking carefully here, let's see here, whoops. If you're looking carefully here, you'll be able to see that river, it will take a jog over here. So this is part of, and I didn't figure this out either. This was actually my wife, Julianne, and her brother came out to visit us and his family, but one day they were all tired. So the 2 of them just went in, and the closest thing we had to a 4-wheel drive, and they drove out there. And there's actually a little road you can go. There's this national park in the middle of this field because it has a couple of a specific kind of acacia tree that it is almost extinct in the land of Israel. So they've made that little area a national park, so you can drive right out into the middle and start climbing around. And they figured out, and that's what they convinced me to come and do this hiking that I was talking about, that there's really only about 150, maybe 200-yard area where David could have, and I think if you go down, well, all right, where David could have fought Goliath, because he has to go where the river is closer to his camp than it is to the side where the Philistines are. And if you narrow down where he would have climbed down, as I showed you when I was experimenting with that, I think you end up being able to locate probably within about 50 yards, maybe 100 yards where that battle takes place, which is kind of fun. So let's read this a little bit. The Philistine, I have to hide this again. Therefore, David ran and stood upon the Philistine. So this is after he's hit him with his stone, right? And drew his sword and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof and slew him and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. So they chased them all the way out to the coastal plains. All right. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sha'araim. There's where we get Sha'araim. So they're falling down by the way to Sha'araim, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. So the Philistines fall especially by the way of Sha'araim, but then they keep chasing them all the way to Gath and Ekron. Okay, so let's see if we can kind of figure that out. again, here we have this picture where the students are doing this and the river goes here and then it cuts over there. You can't quite see from here. I think it's just a little north of here is where David would have crossed. Here you can see Dr. Chadwick teaching some of the students to get ready with their slings and so on. Here you have my daughter Sabrina when she was 5, killing our 6'5" student. So we thought that was maybe a good comparison. Although I will say that if we usually think of it, and you take the Dead Sea Scrolls or the normal. Oh, sorry.
It's going kind of in and out.
Yeah, that was, I keep, every now and then I bump the cord for this mic and it makes it so it doesn't work well. Is it working better now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem that I have sometimes. Anyway, if you go with the way the what's called the Masoretic text, or the version that we translate into our scriptures, and the typical version of the cubit, you get like this 9 foot something out of this huge guy, and he is huge one way or the other. But if you go with the Dead Sea Scrolls version, and if you go with the version of the cubit that Dr. Chadwick, I think, has very convincingly demonstrated is really the cubit in this area, then you get a guy who's probably around 7'6", maybe 7'9", something like that. So think of a big Sean Bradley, right? Not a skinny one, but a really big Sean Bradley, or maybe that's too long ago. You guys don't know who that is. But anyway, it's still huge, and you don't want to fight this guy, but that might be more of the size we're thinking of. But this might be the correct size differential as we look at my daughter with our student there, Brock. Okay, so here we go again. I want you to remember, do I have that I think David defeats Goliath somewhere right where I've got that arrow, and then the Philistines are going to flee when their hero is killed. They're going to have to flee out this way, and remember, this is taken from Azekah, so they're going to have to flee out this way and curve back around Azekah this other way. But note what that gives the Israelites the option to do. They can have some people come down this way and some people come down this way, and they catch the Philistines in between in this pincher movement. And that's probably why it talks about them falling by the way of Sha'araim, because this is the easiest way to get up into Sha'araim, and it's the way you drive up if you're going to visit the excavation there today. So this would be the way of Sha'araim, and that's probably where they get caught in between as the Israelites can come down for both sides. So I think we can locate pretty precisely within 100 yards or less where the battle takes place, and probably within 100 yards or less where they get caught between these two. Well, this one's probably more than 100 yards, but a decent area. They're probably caught, a bunch of them all along the way, but they're caught between the Israelites and start to fall in the way by Sha'araim. All right. Oh yeah, I forgot I had a good yellow exciting thing that makes it look like they got caught there and got killed there. This was a map I had with me one semester. Fantastic student who was also in the ROTC and was studying to make technical maps for them for the Army as part of their battle plan. So he made this little map for me where you can see the different valleys there and how that would have worked. And as they run all the way out, and they're killed all the way out to Gath, and then continue out to Ekron. But hopefully that helps you visualize a little bit how this would have worked with the map that he made. And again, I'll show you this picture where there's Shoko. And so the Philistines are probably somewhere here, and they come running around and probably start to get caught in between the two areas right about where this picture is looking at. I think this is the area where we see a lot of Philistines being killed by the Israelite army. So do I have, I have this again, so just so you can picture it. I don't know why I have that twice, but I guess it's so good it was worth seeing twice. So hopefully that helps you picture it a little bit better, and then maybe we can just spend a couple of seconds capturing what I think is the most important part of the story. And this is not new to anyone here, but it's still worth thinking about. And that's the notion that the reason this happened is because of David's faith in God. David, when he comes and sees what's going on, he says, why does this uncircumcised Philistine defy the armies of God? Everyone else is looking at this and saying, there's a really big guy down there, and we don't have anyone who can kill him. They're looking at it from the world's point of view. And I would say this is the same story that we get with Azekah and the Assyrians. preparing by relying on Egypt and building big walls and those kinds of things. That's the best way to protect yourself from the Assyrians from the world's point of view. But Isaiah and David see a different thing going on. They see covenant people and people who are not covenant people attacking the covenant people and defying God. And they see people who are covenant people either keeping the covenant or not. And so David asks, why would we let this uncircumcised Philistine, meaning someone who is not of the covenant, why will we let him defy God's armies when we are trying to keep the covenant? We should be able to trust in and rely on God. Hezekiah does the same thing under Isaiah's tutelage with the people in Jerusalem. Let's trust in God to defeat the Assyrians, not ourselves. So let's repent, get rid of the idolatry, renew our covenant, and trust in God. That's the huge difference. So that when David comes against Goliath, and we should mention that he has a sling which can kill at a greater distance, right? So I've had one person watching my video on this on my podcast who was emailing me saying artillery always has the advantage, and I think that's true. The way I've heard Dr. Chadwick put it is Goliath's mistake was he brought a sword to a sling fight. So there's certainly an advantage, but it still doesn't work if you're not A, very good, and B, you have God on your side, because Goliath is huge and David is not. But when they come against each other, David says very clearly to Goliath, I come to thee in the name of the living God. And then with great faith, he says, I'll remove your head and the birds will feast on your flesh, right? He has not only does he have faith, but besides faith, he has the ability to see the bigger picture of what is going on, the larger perspective that comes from seeing things the way God sees things. And I think that's part of what we need right now in our day. There's so many tough things going on and so much emotional, social, political, whatever else kinds of battles going on. We will do well to see things with that eternal perspective and to recognize what is really from God and what is not from God, and not be taken in by the things that aren't of God, and don't try and fight it in the way that the world would tell us to fight it, but fight it in a godly way with faith in God. And then we'll come off conqueror despite the odds that are against us. And of that I testify, and for that I pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please. I'd like to have whatever questions you'd like.
Great. So if any of you that are on the call have a question, just go ahead and put that in the chat. But the question that somebody gave was, how many people would have been involved in a battle like this? And when the Philistines fled, how many people are we talking about?
That is a great question. I don't have any good way for answering that. And I haven't seen, maybe there are studies out there that could be able to answer it. I'm not familiar with them. I don't think we have a good way of answering it at this time period. Israel is still coming together as a people. We don't have a good idea of what their population numbers are or of how much of that population would be gathered together in any given battle. So, I mean, you're talking a fair number of people, as many as Saul could gather to stop this Philistine army, I think. But how many can he gather at a time? I really don't know how to answer that question. I'm sorry.
I suppose you can't know everything, but you know an awful
well,
lot.
I can make an answer up if you'd like.
Yeah, that's always good.
Oh, hey, Taylor.
Oh, you know Taylor?
He was one of my students.
Oh, great. Well, then you can see his question.
I was seeing it and then it just disappeared. Hang on, let me
so
put it back up.
Was
Okay.
it common to have champions represent larger groups of people in the battle? Did the nations usually abide the result?
Okay, so it's hard to say whether it's common or not and whether they abided or not. It's certainly known. And you can see it in legends and stories.
Yeah, say that again. Can't hear you.
I need to get a better cord for this mic. Anyway, you can see examples of it or things that allude to it in a number of old stories, but it's hard to know if that's common or if that's more of the heroic kind of epic thing. And it's hard to know how often they actually abided by it. Clearly, in this case, they didn't. And my guess would be most of the time you don't. The losers say, never mind, we're not doing that. Now, it doesn't mean they did stop. They fled, right? So it doesn't mean that it didn't have an effect. It certainly has an effect, but they didn't just say, okay, you've beaten us. Here are our swords. You can, do whatever you want. But they said, okay, that's a problem. Let's get out. And the Israelites took it as, okay, we've won. Let's get after them. So it's certainly changed things.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. That was very informative. So we'll say goodbye, except for first, we're going to have our closing prayer from Clark Anderson.
Eternal Father in heaven, we are so grateful for this time that we've been able to spend together. We are grateful, Father, for the power of place and for the opportunity that we have had to, those of us who have been able to attend the center and to study that fifth gospel of the whole, visiting the Holy Land. We're grateful for how that has impacted our faith in Thee. Father, we're grateful for experts who have spent their time studying Thy Word and in the Holy Land. We're grateful for the insights that were given this evening. Father, we're inspired by the faith that was exhibited in the Valley of Elah, and pray that we might be able to exude that same faith as we face the Goliaths and the challenges in our lives. Again, Father, we thank Thee for all Thou hast given us. We're grateful for the restored gospel, to be part of Thy modern covenant Israel. And we pray for these things and do it in the sacred name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.